As to the conflict in Gaza, from day one, we have worked to impress upon Israel the imperative of protecting civilians. So the weapons, the systems that Israel has sought to acquire, and as I said, have been contracted in many cases over many, many years, go to self-defense. Let me also reiterate what Stefan said about the attack on the World Food Kitchen members, World Central Kitchen, excuse me. First, I can only say that for so many of us, we extend our condolences to the loved ones, to the families, the friends, the colleagues of those who lost their lives, as well as those who were injured. I spoke to Jose Andres just about a week ago about the efforts that World Central Kitchen's engaged in Gaza, as it is in many other conflict zones around the world, including in Ukraine. They have been doing extraordinary, brave work, day in, day out, and critical work to try to make sure that people in need get what they need, starting with the most basic thing of all, food to survive. The victims of yesterday's strike join a record number of humanitarian workers who've been killed in this particular conflict. These people are heroes. They run into the fire, not away from it. They show the best of what humanity has to offer when the going really gets tough. They have to be protected. We shouldn't have a situation where people who are simply trying to help their fellow human beings are themselves at grave risk. We've spoken directly to the Israeli government about this particular incident. We've urged a swift, a thorough, an impartial investigation to understand exactly what happened. And as we have throughout this conflict, we've impressed upon the Israelis the absolute imperative of doing more to protect innocent civilian lives, be they Palestinian children, women, and men, or be they aid workers, as well as to get more humanitarian assistance to more people more effectively.
Thank you very much.
Could you please stand up, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
Don't drop the laptop, John.
Sorry about this. Very disorganized over here. Mr. Secretary, as the leader of the U.S. Department that has approved the transfer of the vast majority of the Israeli bombs dropped in this conflict, do events like the bombing of the World Central Kitchen convoy give you pause about continuing the flood of U.S. weapons into Israel?
With regard to arm transfers, look, I think it's very important to put this in its proper perspective and to understand what we're talking about. First, we have a long-standing commitment to Israel's security and to helping ensure its ability to defend itself. That's been a policy from administration to administration, Republican, Democrat, back and forth. And indeed, that policy developed over many years, developed into successive agreements between the United States and Israel, long duration agreements, 10 years in this case, to provide military assistance over that time frame to about $3 billion a year. That's the system that's in place, and it's long been in place. These arms transfers, every single one, happens consistent with statutory and policy requirements. That includes both informal and formal notifications to Congress, and it's what we do with every country with whom we have a defense relationship that involves the sale or transfer of arms. Now, the other important piece of context is this. With Israel, and this is also true with other countries, there are a number of open cases, open requests of previously notified cases which have not been fully fulfilled or completed. In the case of Israel, for example, there are many requests that were made and were notified to Congress and agreed to that go back a decade or more. And it takes time often to produce the material or the weapons in question, the parts, et cetera. These complex systems, simply put, can take years to actually allow us to fulfill the request and the agreement. So many of the cases that you occasionally report on now underwent congressional review years ago and were notified years ago, well before the conflict in Gaza started.
Isn't that more of a problem, though, because they were approved in a non-wartime context?
Well,
the Congress never had a chance.
Let me come to that, because, again, all of this context is very, very important. We, of course, also go out of our way to make sure that we're actually going above and beyond the law and what's required in briefing Congress. We go to the relevant oversight committees. We make sure that they're aware of ongoing transfers above the statutory threshold, even ones that they've approved a long time ago. And even when there's no requirement that there be additional notice or additional approval of any kind. Now, we've been focused on trying to make sure that October 7th can never happen again. But having said that, the security relationship we have with Israel is not just about Gaza, Hamas, October 7th. It's also about the threats posed to Israel by Hezbollah, by Iran, by various other actors in the region, each one of which has vowed, one way or another, to try to destroy Israel. So the weapons, the systems that Israel has sought to acquire, and as I said, have been contracted in many cases over many, many years, go to self-defense. They go to deterrence, trying to avoid more conflicts. They go to replenishment of their supplies and their stocks. So that's the system that's in place, has been in place for a long time, and one that continues. Now, as to the conflict in Gaza, from day one, we have worked to impress upon Israel the imperative of protecting civilians, of adhering fully to international humanitarian law, to the law of armed conflict. That is something that we are looking at and review on a regular basis, and that we're engaged with Israel on a regular basis, including as recently as yesterday when we met by video with the Israeli delegation.